Hello everyone, welcome back to Fiber by Nature. Today we're going to be doing something a little bit different. Obviously you saw the title and this is what you clicked on the video for. But today we're going to be doing some sewing and a little bit of history, but not much. So I won't bore you with too many facts. But if you watched my history of tartan video, you would have seen that they recently recreated a tartan that they found in a bog in Glen Affric in Scotland, dated from the 15 to 1600s. And obviously, I'm not receiving that is in a museum, but I did get some of the recreation fabric. So we are going to make a kilt out of that today. But first, let's unbox this. So I never originally intended to buy this fabric until a little later, but the opportunity just kind of came to me and I took it, and honestly I don't think that was a horrible idea because I'm actually really excited and cannot wait to start this project. So let's see the fabric. Oh my gosh. So here it is. This fabric is absolutely gorgeous. It is everything I hoped for. And without further ado, let's get straight into the project. Alright, so here we are. Here's the fabric laid out. As you can see, the fabric is very wide and relatively short. And for you guys who are sewists, know that pleats take up a lot of fabric. So this piece is only around roughly 2 meters / 2 yards long. And to make a full kilt, or at least a box pleated kilt, I need about 4. But for an entire kilt, like the kilt I wore at Maryland, it took about 6 yards, and a traditional kilt can go up to 8 and 10 yards of fabric. Obviously, this is not that much, but box pleats take up much less fabric, so I could get away with basically splitting this fabric down the middle and turning it on this side to make this one long piece of fabric. And also I can get away with that because obviously the kilt is not yay wide. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to split it right down the middle by ripping it, and then I can start putting chalk marks on the fabric and start with pinning. Alright, so to split this, I'm going to find the center of the fabric. I folded this in half. I'm just going to open this, make sure that I know that this halfway point of the fabric is this green line right here. And I'm going to open that up and make chalk mark. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take my scissors and cut about 1 inch in, then grabbing the 2 ends on both sides, I'm going to pull and tear through that fabric, and that creates a very straight line across. Now we have 2 sides. Now, one reason to ripping or tearing your cloth as opposed to cutting it is because 1, it's obviously way faster if you're dealing with large amounts of fabric. And number 2, as you can see, it is a very clean line as to when cutting with scissors. And cutting with scissors can create uneven lines just because of how people cut. You're obviously not going to cut straight on the same thread at the same time. I mean, if you have that skill, that's amazing, but most people don't have that skill, so ripping the fabric will create a very straight and clean line across the entire fabric. So for the next step, and basically this whole project, I'm using the Art of Kilt Making by Barbara Tewksbury. It is a great book. It's on Amazon, and I will link it down in the description below. Alright, so the first part of making this kilt is I need to, this is still around 25 inches wide, so what I need to do is actually cut this down to my length that I need it to be, and that measurement is basically from your natural waist down to right above your knee. So I'm going to, again, tear it. I have marked 22 inches right here, and I'm just going to tear it like I did for tearing it in half. So the first part of making this kilt is we need to mark and chalk out the apron, which is the front part of the kilt. So essentially, the aprons are tapered, so it goes slightly out and down. So it's kilts are A-line garment, meaning that there is a slight taper, obviously. So we are going to mark that out with Tailor chalk. And these markings, this is going to be the center stripe that runs down through the apron. And this 2-inch gap this is the top of the navel, and this is your natural waistline. That is an approximate proportion of your body size. And then the next marking at your hip is going to be the fell, which is where the pleats end, and that is basically 1/3 of the width of your fabric. Alright, so as you guys know, I put up a poll on my social media and whatnot, and you guys really liked the rust stripe. So here we are. I'm pitting all the pleats so far to the rust stripe. This is just a very rough draft. I have done the math to taper the pleats from the waist to the hip measurement, but so far I think it's looking pretty good. So I'm going to go ahead and finish that, and I will see you when we can start basting the pleats down. Okay, so that statement right there was a complete lie. It took me about 3 more times to get the pleat math just right. What I originally done was I had pleated to every other occurrence of that rust stripe, but I had not read the instructions very thoroughly, and I was supposed to pleat to every single occurrence to the stripe. So essentially what I had done is I had only half the amount of pleats I was supposed to do. Then when I redid the pleats were much too wide. It almost wrapped around my entire waist, and as you guys probably know by now, the pleats are only supposed to be on half of the entire kilt. So obviously that didn't work out. So I had to go then and sort of fuss and move around the pleats, and I ended up taking out more fabric and cutting some fabric out to shorten the amount of repeats of the tartan I had in the fabric where the pleats were, so then it had less occurrence of that rust stripe. Now, I am not going to show you all of those mistakes because that would take up a lot of time, but I just did want to tell you because it's just really important to see that not everything always goes how you plan, and that in crafts it often takes multiple tries to get the final product. So the pleats are now finally all sorted out, and we can finally get to sewing. Alright, so I finally redid all the math, redid all the pleats. They're only chalked out. That's because now that everything is final, I'm going to go and baste all of them. And for my non-sewists, that essentially means a very loose stitch that is easy to take out, but is strong enough to hold things together while you're making the actual stitches. So let's finally, after about 2 weeks of figuring out pleat layout, we can finally go ahead and start with needle and thread. Okay, so here we are. We are finally at the sewing table, and I have done already the apron edge and the first pleat. I'm also going to do the fell stitch, or as in the book it is called an edge stitch. But essentially the goal of the fell stitch is that you cannot see the stitches, and you should not be able to see the stitches when you pull apart, and you want to make these as tight as possible. So essentially you're trying to create a no stitch seam, even though there are plenty of stitches in there. So let's get right into sewing. Alright, a fell stitch is really common on tailoring, Lots of historical garments have them, lots of suits have them. It's basically useful for whenever you need to create a folded edge and you don't want to see the stitches that go around it. Horrible lighting. It is currently 9:20 at night, but I just wanted to hop on here and show you guys what this is looking so far. I still have to do, I'm still restitching this pleat, but so far this is looking pretty good. Here's what it will look like eventually across the back. Obviously these wrinkles will even themselves out when we do all the finishing and all that stuff, but I think this is looking pretty good. However, I do think I'm going to add another pleat on this side just so that we have one more pleat, because this is not where it's, there should be farther up. So we're going to make this rust stripe a pleat right here, and I think we can then move on to the inner workings of all this. So I will see you guys when we're done with the pleats. Something else that I forgot to add at the beginning is that you should always also be waxing your thread. This basically just kind of helps strengthen your thread and basically gives it more grip and it'll stay in your fabric. So let's get back to sewing, I guess, again. Okay, so after nearly about a month of stitching and unstitching, pleats are finally finished. I'm very happy with how they came out. There's still some spots that are but this is my second kilt that I've made and they're not extremely noticeable, so I'll just leave them for now, especially because I've already done so much. So as you can see, I've also pinned around and make sure all the boxes are opened, and because they were knife pleats before and now they need to be opened in their boxes. And I've also actually basted with thread down here, and my plan is to take a long piece of thread around here and sort of just like tack these edges down just so that they stay open just for the rest of like all the inside work. And then also when I eventually get to pressing them or ironing them, they're all nice and folded already. And just to make my life easier so that when I'm dealing with the whole inside of the kilt, it doesn't become a whole mess. So I'm going to go ahead and do as I said and tack these down, and then we can finally get started on the inside of the kilt. All right, so welcome to the back of the kilt. So this is where things get a little technical, lots of tailoring and structural work, but that's not completely difficult. However, and our first order of business is to get this whole back situation, the join of the two pieces figured out. As you did see, I did cut the excess fabric off, so enjoy some ASMR. But for now, I do need to sew basically along this line so that when folded, it's going to look like the set, because when stitched, this stripe should align, and you'll see. But essentially, we want to make it as if these two fabrics or two sides were never separate in the first place and it was all one piece to begin with. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm probably going to use a back stitch and then I'll use a blanket stitch to make sure that the edges don't really fray and so that doesn't become a total mess. And you can see me here using a backstitch to close this seam, and then unfortunately I didn't record it, but then I used a blanket stitch, which you will see in the next shot, to sort of again close up that raw seam. Alright, so welcome back to this project. It is currently October. Yes, I started this project in June, but, you know, life gets in the way sometimes. There's many other things, but I finally moved on to inside stuff. As you can see, the back center pleat has been stitched down and all that stuff. Then I also did what's called a steeking, which is basically pulling all these pleats out. For box pleats, usually it's a whole other thing for knife pleats, but for box pleats, this is how you sort of keep all the pleats flat and open and in their shape. And as you can see, we have some glorious pad stitching over here. This is for tailoring and making sure that it has the sort of curved shape. We will, in the future, be doing lots more of this, so lots more of tailoring to come. But what I'm going to do now is put in a stabilizer, which is essentially a strip of fabric that goes across the back and basically keeps the pleats from stretching when it's finally worn. Here you can see me stitching the stabilizer to the back of the kilt. As I previously mentioned, it is approximately a 2-inch strip of broadcloth that is sewn onto the back of the pleats to prevent excessive strain on the seams of all the pleats and so that they don't tear. To do this, I use carpet thread to make these X-like stitches on the back of each pleat, while making sure that the thread doesn't show up on the front side of the kilt. Once finished with the stabilizer, I moved on to the horsehair canvas, which essentially helps give a flat surface and for further stabilizing to the front aprons and the entire kilt. That gets basted down to the front apron, and as you'll see later, also gets tailor stitched at the edges where the pleats begin. So as you can see, all of this, the aprons are both stitched and lined with the tailor's canvas, and now we are going to, or I am, not you guys, I am going to be putting tailor's canvas in the back, again for the same purposes as here, also as second thing to keep this, all this in place, keep the pleats, and mainly from so that this doesn't scrunch, sort of like this, but just across, and again just to create the smoother and make it so that it doesn't wrinkle, all of the above, all those good things. So I'm going to cut that out, and then we're going to do a whole lot of pad stitching. Once I got the canvas where I wanted it to and nice and pinned, I went ahead and started doing the copious amounts of stitching that goes into the back canvas. Okay, so as you can see, I've finished all of the pad stitching and all of the canvas, and if I want to get it done for quite literally tomorrow. Disclaimer from editing Kai, that did not happen. I think my best plan of action for now is to do anything that I can by machine. As you can see, I've done the inside apron edge because that won't be shown. So I've done this, and then I'll go ahead and do any more of the inside work that can be done by hand, or sorry, by machine, and then do the waistband most of the waistband by machine, and then do the other half by hand, and then we can do the lining and the buckles, and then we'll be done. The waistband is simply done by pinning it front sides to front sides, and then sewing along the top edge. Eventually, once the lining gets put in, this will get folded underneath the lining and then stitched under the lining. This is my sticker logo that I have in my shop, linked down below, and that I have on some of my shirts that you'll see in my videos and whatnot. So I had this custom done for me, and I will be using this for the linings. So I'm going to pre-cut out the lining pieces, pack that up, and then get on the road to Rhinebeck. Oh God. I went ahead with an awl to punch the holes in the leather straps. This got sewn on along with the buckle tab and metal buckle at the sides of the kilt. Then I went ahead and lightly backstitched the waistband to tack it down so that the lining could be sewn in. After taking out the basting stitches, a good final press, sewing in the label, the kilt is ready to be worn. Up until the 1800s, most kilts were these shorter yardage box pleat styles, hence why I chose this style over your typical knife pleats, to more fit the time frame of where this fabric was found. And with that, I hope you like this video, and with that, I will see you guys next time. Keep yarning.